Hey Optimancers, so we are working on our Augur build. This is our Diviner Knowledge Cleric build. We are taking it from 11th level through 20th level. So we're just looking at the high levels here. In our previous videos, we've been talking about how this build fulfills the God Wizard style, which is we stay back from combat, we're not doing damage to our enemies. Our main focus is helping the other PCs finish off the enemies with significantly less danger than they would normally have. We will continue that role moving forward. So going to level 10 as a wizard is level 11 total character level. This is going to give us access to a 6th level spell slot, but not 6th level spells. But before we get into spells, let's talk about the third eye. So at 10th level, a diviner gets a pretty nice ability called the third eye. So we can use our action to increase our powers of perception. When we do so, choose one of the following benefits, which lasts until you're incapacitated or you take a short or long rest. You can't use this feature again until you've had a rest. The three choices you have: dark vision, ethereal sight, greater comprehension, or see invisibility. So now first off, we are human, which means we don't have dark vision, so we might consider dark vision. I don't think it's our best option here, but it is one option. Certainly if we don't want to be using a light source for some reason, then dark vision, we can take it through the third eye, and then we don't have to worry about taking a dark vision spell, for example. Ethereal sight allows you to see into the ethereal plane within 60 feet. That can be really useful in certain situations, but most of the time that doesn't come up. Most of the time there's nothing in the ethereal plane around you that you need to be worried about. The next one you get is greater comprehension. You can read any language. Now we can already read any language. It just requires 10 minutes so we can complete the comprehend languages ritual. This would allow us to do it without using that 10 minutes. I think that's a pretty minor effect, and I think that's the worst of the choices here. And then the final one, the one I would probably take most of the time, is see invisibility. You can see invisible creatures and objects within 10 feet of you that are within line of sight. So something comes up to you that's invisible, you can see it. That again, circumstantial, but when it comes up, it's usually pretty important. So my instincts would be to take see invisibility as my first priority, or maybe dark vision as my second priority. I would only take ethereal sight if I had reason to believe that I would need to see something in the ethereal plane, and then greater comprehension I'd almost never take. Now you can do this two ways. You can either take your rest and then right after your rest activate the one that you want, or you could also potentially just wait and see if there's a need for one of them, and then you could activate it as an action. Not something that I necessarily want to do in combat, because using an action is still a pretty big investment, but outside of combat sometimes things come up and then you would know which one that you needed. Now we are going to get another cantrip at this level, which gives us 5 wizard cantrips, but it gives us 8 cantrips overall, because remember we also have 3 clerical cantrips. So we have a ton of cantrips. So choose whatever you like here. We are 11th level. Now technically speaking, our attack cantrips have scaled twice now. So generally that's 3 dice of damage, whatever the die type is for that cantrip. We already have 2 attack cantrips. One uses an attack roll, one requires a saving throw. I probably wouldn't be looking at getting another attack cantrip, even though I've got a number of utility things already covered. So let's go ahead and take Mage Hand. I don't know how much we're going to be using cantrips anymore, including Mage Hand, but as far as cantrips go, I'd say it's a pretty good one. So we're going to get 2 spell choices. Now we're stuck with 5th level spells, even though we now have 6th level slots. So that makes me think that a spell that we could use a 6th level slot for to improved effect is worth taking. And the one I'm thinking is Conjure Elemental. Because with Conjure Elemental, if we use a 6th level spell slot, we can get an invisible stalker. And as a diviner, I think thematically it's pretty appropriate to be able to conjure something that can find somebody anywhere on the same plane of existence. It's also just another method for scouting or checking things out. So technically this isn't a divination spell, but we can use it for divination, and we can use it for combat, because we can have that invisible stalker attack our enemies, or we could just conjure a regular elemental. The other spell I'm going to take at this level is Transmute Rock. So Transmute Rock is good for a number of reasons. The first And most important, and the main reason I'm taking this spell, is it doesn't use our concentration. So we can cast this spell while we're concentrating on another spell. And the second thing is it has a number of effects, which means it's versatile. So we can transmute rock in the ceiling so that it lands on our enemies. We can transmute rock below our enemies so they sink into it. And what we can do with it is we can create pretty effective battlefield control not using our concentration. And that is relatively rare and probably worth a 5th level slot. When creatures are caught in the mud, they are really, really slow. So as a battlefield control, it's reasonably effective considering it doesn't use our concentration. So this is what we have prepared as an 11th level character. So we have, of course, our cleric spells. We've got 3 cantrips, and technically speaking, we have 4 first level spells. One of them is Identify, which is a ritual. One of them is Command, which we're never going to cast. Bless and Healing Word, I'm not sure I would worry about preparing them anymore at this point, but I'm not sure what first level cleric spells I'd want to prepare. So they're probably as good as anything at this point. I'm not getting a lot out of those. But in terms of my wizard preparations, for first level spells, what I have still prepared is Absorb Elements, Featherfall, and Shield. If you want to get rid of Featherfall to prepare something else, you're probably fine to do so. Then in our second level spells, I have Blindness and Deafness still prepared, and Detect Thoughts. So Detect Thoughts is a divination spell, which means when I cast it, I get a first level spell back, and Blindness, Deafness, not using my concentration. Not sure I would be casting it a lot at this level. It's a Constitution saving throw. It's providing a saving throw every round. Once again, it's probably not worth my Portent anymore, and we're not upcasting it. But because it doesn't use our concentration, it's using a fairly low resource cost, it still might be something I do some of the time. And I'm not going to be using my second level slots for a lot else. So then we get into our third level. I'm going to keep Counterspell prepared right through 20th level. Probably Fear 2, also a really good spell that stays effective at higher levels. And then Thunderstep is my primary getaway spell, so I'm going to want to keep that saved as well. Then we get into our 4th level spells. Arcane Eye is probably my best divination spell. Then I've got Banishment. Now, I could potentially get rid of Banishment at any point here, because the main reason I prepared Banishment was because I wasn't going to have anything else to do with my 5th level slots. That's no longer the case, so we could easily get rid of Banishment if we wanted to and take something else. And Polymorph, which I'm going to be keeping prepared at this point. It's still a good spell at this point. And then 5th level spells, I've got everything that's not a ritual prepared. So I've got my Conjure Elemental, my Transmute Rock, and my Wall of Force. So remember, we can cast up to 6th level spells at this point, so we only get 1 6th level slot. We, at this point, still only have 2 5th level slots. But once you add up all your slots together, generally speaking, we can be casting a spell more often than not on our turn. And we have made sure to combine a number of different effects with our concentration, so we can choose what to do with our concentration depending on our situation. And then we have a couple things we can do that don't require a concentration, so we will have things to do while we're concentrating on something else. So I'm going to start going up 2 levels at a time. So we're going to take the wizard to 12th level. And again, this is bringing us our 6th level spells, and it's bringing us 7th level slots. As a 12th level wizard, we're going to get an ability score improvement. As I mentioned, I want to get my intelligence up to 20 now because we have a number of spells with this character that provides saving throws. We're not going to be using Portent on all of them, so getting those up is really good. Also, we want to have as many preparations as we can have. So we are going to pick 4 6th level slots. The first one I'm going to pick is Contingency. Now, my favorite combination for a contingency is Contingency plus Dimension Door. This character doesn't have Dimension Door, but he does have Thunderstep, which will work in a pinch. So you can combine your contingency with a Thunderstep. But if you are in a campaign where you've been able to add spells and you have Dimension Door, I would do Dimension Door instead of Thunderstep. The second spell I'm going to take is True Seeing, because again, it's a divination spell, very useful spell, and it is going to give us our expert divination so we can get an additional spell slot back of 5th level. The next spell I'm going to take is Mass Suggestion, arguably the best 6th level spell for a lot of casters. Because wizards have contingency, I'd probably say that's even a better spell. But Mass Suggestion affects large quantities of enemies, doesn't use your concentration, so it is going to be our most powerful spell in combat. And the final spell I'm going to take is Eye Bite. So Eye Bite is a concentration spell, so we're not doing it when we're concentrating on something else. The thing I like about Eye Bite is it really extends out that resource cost. So we're using the 6th level spell slot to cast it, but it gives us something to do with our action every round, as long as we're concentrating on it. So we pick an enemy, they make a saving throw, it's wisdom, so not too bad, and then we can choose for them to fall asleep, panicked, or sickened. Sickened is generally not the one we want to do. We want to do either asleep or panicked. I talked about this in my tactics videos, so if you are wondering which one you want to do, I go into detail on that. But it is a good spell, and I think it's a good spell for a god wizard especially. Now, contingency, we're not going to need to prepare while we're adventuring. This is something we cast before we start adventuring, so we have it prepared on our off time. So we want to prepare Eye Bite, Mass Suggestion, and True Seeing. Now, I only have 2 preparation slots, so I need to get rid of a preparation. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to unprepare Polymorph. We are starting to get to the level, we're at level 13, where using Polymorph as a buff isn't all that effective anymore, because we're just not getting any more powerful creatures, right? We're using the same creature we were using at 8th level. So the main reason I'd be using Polymorph at this level is a debuff, right? So that you polymorph something into a creature. But we can use our Banishment to do a very similar thing in terms of taking an enemy out of combat who fails a saving throw that we can often make happen with our Portent. Thing I like about Banishment that Polymorph doesn't have for me is the scaling, because with Banishment, this character now has a 7th level spell slot. I do not have 7th level spells. So with Banishment, I can scale it so that 4 creatures I can target with a Banishment using a 7th level slot. Pretty effective. So in terms of scaling, that's pretty good. And if I'm going to be using that 7th level slot, ideally, I want to have something that I'm going to be upcasting effectively. None of my 6th level spells upcast effectively. I still might use my 7th level slot if I want to cast another 6th level spell. But if I want to do something that is going to scale, choosing to scale Banishment isn't a bad choice. So we're going to go to 15th level as a character, 14th level as a wizard. So now we're looking at 7th level spells, 8th level spell slots. First, though, we get Greater Portent. Greater Portent, easy as pie. All it means is instead of rolling 2 Portent dice, we're rolling 3 Portent dice. Portent are great. Getting another Portent die is great. And it is not a huge boost in power considering that we already had 2 Portents right at 2nd level and we get 1 more at 14th level. You would think it would go the other way around, but you'll still love to have that additional d20. It's a perfectly good ability. You're going to use it all the time and it's effective. We are going to get 4 additional spells at this level, and now we have access to the 7th level spells. And the first one, guess what? I'm taking Force Cage. As a god wizard, this should be the obvious first choice. This will be the first spell at 7th level that I take. Second spell I'm going to take, 7th level, is Simulacrum. Again, this should be obvious. When we get our first access to 7th level spells, those are the first 2 I'm going to take. So I'm going to get 2 more spells, and these ones I think you have a lot more options with because there's nothing that I think is a must-have beyond those first 2. But I will take Teleport. I think it's a good utility spell that comes up, and it can be used as a mass getaway spell if you want. And the other spell I'm going to take is Reverse Gravity, which can be a good battlefield control spell. And again, that is the concentration for this character. So to walk you through the preparations for this character, our 7th level spells, we're going to have Force Cage, Reverse Gravity, Teleport, all prepared. Now, we only have 1 7th level slot, but we do have an 8th level slot that we could use for a 7th level spell, and we don't have any 8th level spells, so that's likely what we would do with it. So we may be casting more than one of these spells. Also, they're all useful in vastly different situations. So we're not necessarily going to pick which situation is going to come up, and having all 3 available means the one that we need at that time is the one we can cast. At 6th level, our Mass Suggestion, our Eye Bite, and our True Seeing. At 5th level, our Conjure Elemental, and I'm going to keep that one prepared because being able to get that Invisible Stalker has something we can't do with divination spells that fits our divination theme. So I'm going to keep that one prepared all the way to 20th level. And then Transmute Rock, which again doesn't use a concentration, and Wall of Force. Now Force Cage is just better than Wall of Force, but when we don't want to be using that high level spell slot, Wall of Force allows us to save that and use a lower resource cost, often to do the same effect. 4th level, Arcane Eye and Banishment. Banishment, again, often I might use a higher level spell slot to get an increased effect. 3rd level, Counterspell, Fear, Thunderstep, and all 3 of those I'm going to keep prepared. 2nd level, Blindness, Deafness, Detect Thoughts. Again, if I needed to get rid of a preparation, Blindness, Deafness would probably be my next choice. And then 1st level, Absorb Elements, Featherfall, Shield, all circumstantial spells that can save you. And they come up enough that we will be using 1st level slots fairly regularly to activate them. Mainly Shield. A Shield spell you're just going to cast over and over again, even when you got a good armor class. That additional 5 will still often turn a hit into a miss. So then we bring our overall character level to 17, but our wizard level to 16. So this is going to be one of those levels where there's some sting, because another caster, if we were a straight wizard, we could get Wish right now. We're not going to be able to do that. We're going to be stuck with 8th level spells, but we have a 9th level slot and no 9th level spell we can cast with it. That, of course, changes next level. We get an ability score improvement. Now we have a character level pretty high now and a good proficiency bonus. So this is a good point for us to take Resilient Constitution. Resilient Constitution is going to give us a +6 bonus to our Constitution saving throws. Not just concentration, but all Constitution saving throws. That's a big bonus, and it's as big as it's ever going to get. So we might as well grab Resilient now. So we can choose 4 spells of up to 8th level now. The first one I'm going to take is Illusory Dragon. Now I might consider Maze as a spell at this level. Illusory Dragon, though, provides a very different effect that is also really effective, and I, again, don't want every wizard to be the same here. And I think that Illusory Dragon gives you a lot of options. I talk about it in my high level tactics video. I talk about it in my 8th level spells video. So with this wizard, what I'll do is I'll take Illusory Dragon. Still fulfills that God Wizard concept. I'm going to grab Clone. Now, with Clone, sometimes it's a really useful spell, sometimes it's not. It really depends on the campaign. And I talk about Clone specifically in my spell video. I suggest you go listen to that if you're considering taking Clone, because there are some downsides to consider with Clone as well. The one I'm going to take Mind Blank, because Mind Blank, not going to use our concentration, get a good duration, makes us immune to all kinds of things. It also protects us against things like the Charm Condition or any divination spells. Now, as a diviner, I kind of like the idea that my character will be immune to divination spells. So I might cast the Mind Blank on myself. It's a 24-hour duration. And there's really no point in us taking another 8th level spell. Clone is something we're going to be casting when we're not adventuring. So I'm not going to be preparing it, so it's not interfering. The other 8th level spell I'm going to take is Demiplane, and again, that's one I'm going to not prepare when we're adventuring. Demiplane is something I'm going to cast when we're not adventuring, and we can use it for storage and that kind of thing. But most of the time, my 8th level slot is going to be used on something else, so I'm not going to be able to cast Demiplane unless we take like a long rest to change my preparations specifically to access Demiplane. So this is how it would work. We're adventuring. I use my 8th level slot. Maybe I do a Mind Blank. Maybe I do an Illusory Dragon. We have a huge fight. We kill the dragon. There's a hoard of treasure. We can't possibly carry it all. Our bags of holding are full. So we're probably going to want a long rest at that point. So we're going to take our long rest, do our Lehman's Tiny Hut to make it safe. And then the next morning, when I prepare my spells, I can prepare a Demiplane, cast it, and then we can get all that treasure into the Demiplane. Then I can access it again after the adventure is done. But in terms of preparations, all that's changing from the previous time we look at preparations is I will have Illusory Dragon and Mind Blank both prepared. So now we're going to go to 19th level, and this is as high as we're going to go with Wizard. So we're going to go to an 18th level Wizard. Now, if we went to 19th level, we would get an additional feat. We don't really have any feats that we need. They're starting to give us diminishing returns now. So I'm going to switch back to Cleric with my 20th level. But right now, as an 18th level wizard, we're going to get Spell Mastery. And I do like Spell Mastery. I'm going to pick 2 spells, one first level, one second level, that are already in my spell book. They automatically become prepared, and I don't need to use a spell slot to cast them. And I can cast them as often as I want. The first I'm going to pick is a second level spell, and I think probably what I would do is either Suggestion or maybe Detect Thoughts. I don't think Web is something I would want to be concentrating on when I'm a 19th level character, but Detect Thoughts comes up often out of combat, so it's not necessarily interfering with other concentration. And same thing with Suggestion. I just think they are ones that might be useful outside of combat. Because of the theme of this character, I will go with Detect Thoughts. And the first level spell I'm going to learn to cast without preparation is Shield, because it's the one that comes up the most often. So we're going to get an additional 4 spells, and now we can finally access our 9th level spells. And I will go ahead and take Wish. Now, I'm thinking with this character to do a little different, I probably wouldn't prepare Wish. But when I'm outside of adventuring, good chance I'm going to want to be able to cast Wish to get my instant simulacrums and all that kind of thing. So I'll still want to take the Wish spell and have it in my spell book. Same thing with True Polymorph. True Polymorph is a good spell to have prepared and cast in combat, but it's also a good spell to just have in your spell book and be able to cast it when you're not adventuring. Now we're going to pick 2 more spells. These are the spells I'm going to consider casting when I'm in combat, and I'm going to prepare them with this character. The first one is the Prismatic Wall. Prismatic Wall is the ultimate battlefield control spell. And then the second one is Shape Change, just for something different to do. You can take the different forms that can have innate spell casting, and then you can access those spells as well as any abilities of the form. Now, you don't get legendary actions or anything like that, but we can significantly boost our defenses, our utility, and access a bunch of spells that we otherwise wouldn't be able to access. So I think Shape Change is a good spell. It's not my favorite 9th level spell, but like I said, with these builds, I want to do some different spells that would still be really good, and I don't think you'd be shortchanged by taking Shape Change and Prismatic Wall as your prepared 9th level spells. Now at 19th level, I don't think this character gets a lot more at 20th level no matter what we do. And that's often the case with D&D. Usually once we get to 17th level, we're pretty much at our apex of power. But I do think that this character benefits more from getting a 2nd level of Cleric than from increasing Wizard to level 19. As I mentioned, if you did Wizard level 19, you get an ability score improvement, and we would get 2 additional spells, which I probably look at ritual spells because it would only give me 1 more preparation. But with a Cleric, what we can get with a 2nd level Cleric is Channel Divinity. So we can use our Channel Divinity after any rest, whether it's long or short rest. And what the Knowledge Cleric gets is they can use their Channel Divinity, and for 10 minutes they can get proficiency with a skill or tool. So no matter how obscure the tool is, or a skill that just nobody took and we have a big proficiency bonus at this point, we can get proficiency, which can make a significant difference. +6 is the difference. Now, technically speaking, that takes us to our 20th level spell chart, and we get an additional 1st level spell for Cleric, and who cares? So I'll go ahead and take Ceremony because it's a ritual and it's not going to use any slots. So that is the Augur at 20th level. Now, with a Diviner, I find that there's a huge bump in power as soon as Portent hits the table. So with this character, I think level 3 is a big level for this character. And because we've got our Knowledge Cleric already built up, we're going to have good skills right away, lots of languages right away, and a couple useful clerical spells that are there for us. But look at how this ends up. We're going to end up with a +17 on Arcana and History. We can do a Guidance and boost that another D4. So we can get a 20 before we even roll the D20 die. So then it's possible to get like 40 on some of these checks. And then we get our Portent, and our Portent really does change the game. And again, if you have not played Portent before and you want to try this out, I got to tell you that of all the wizard subclass abilities, it is the most fun to play. There's nothing like watching a DM get excited about something he's going to do to you, finally going to get at that god wizard, and then he picks up the d20 and you go, by the way, he rolls a 2. Just, oh, it's beautiful. And his face drops and all the other players laugh. And it really changes the dynamic of the game. And when we're talking about a god wizard, a wizard that is worried about keeping himself protected, not necessarily with spells, but with tactics, when a DM can also be foiled on those few times where they would otherwise be able to target you, that's just lovely. As with all these builds, you get to level 20, you get those 9th level spells, you're super powerful. Levels 11 through 20 change more mildly between these builds. I find the bigger differences are at those lower levels. And this is a character I've played multiple times at the lower levels, this build, not with a variant human. I've used other races, but it doesn't really matter. And it is a lot of fun and very effective. So that's it. That is the Augur build. Next week we'll be talking about the Enchanter. Until then, I'm going to sit back and relax, and I'm going to have some fun. D&D's for everyone. Thanks, Optimancers. See you next time.